Cool. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good.
Good to hear. All right. So, as you've already probably guessed, my name is Andrew Schappert. Here today to talk to you a project that Lee Allen and myself have been working on for the
All right,
past
so
year
my
and a
cat
half.
bigger.
All right. Oh, you made yourself. It's where we're trying to work in the Geoai tools that Esri had been uh, working on, training, what have you, and to see what we can do with them. All right. So to I don't think is this sharing the actual presentation?
We're just seeing your slide deck. It's not full screen.
Cool. So it's not working properly. Hold on, let me see if I can. I think the issue is I'm sharing the wrong screen.
Well, maybe that's why it didn't mute it, is because saying my speaker's not working. That's okay. I don't plan on talking.
No, I don't have speaker on mine, so
Um,
just as long as I can hear them.
Yep.
Sorry about this, people. Cool. This is that better?
Yes.
Cool. Sorry about that.
Yep.
All right. So, starting from the beginning. Again, I'm with Shawnee County Appraisal Office. I was most recently working with Lee Allen, as you all know and love. As you've all read the abstract, this project is dovetailing off of an earlier project from a bit before my time when we in 2019 the Shawnee County hired a third party company with an $11,000 contract. They ended up promising millions of things, like millions of detections. They ended up just being everything that we had actually had to QC and sort through. But they did find about $90,000 worth of taxable unpermitted stuff. So this was an experiment to see about if we can do something similar in-house at a much lower cost, and also being able to again tune this to our own standards. But and again, much lower cost. The only real cost from here on out is the license cost, which is I checked online yesterday. It's about $650, about 94% less. So huzzah! Also, why AI itself? As you will probably gather from this, I don't like AI on a personal note. But again, my opinion aside,
Worst thing at all.
what was that?
That's bullshit.
Sorry. Okay. My opinion aside, there actually might be uses for this that we don't see, as it were. So again, it is, as the late Sir Terry Pratchett put it, steam engine time for AI at this moment, where we're seeing a large
Yeah.
growth in use and experimentation within. So again, it's experiment to see how this would work, if this could work for us in the future. All right. So as I mentioned before, this is machine learning. This is using trained scripts that Esri has available under the imagery analyst license. They're GeoAI tools. This isn't the generative AI that you see a lot in pop culture these days. This is an attempt to see about adding another tool to the toolbox that we can possibly get it working in integrating it to our already existing stuff. This isn't an attempt to replace what we have to supplant it. This is an attempt to refine it to make our own process better, quicker, a little less time and a little less time intensive. And the attempt to do this, to be able to process the large number of properties that we see in moving a lot of that heavy lifting off of the weight of people, and to just sort through every single property to see if we can do that to a trained script. And again, hopefully it is to see if we can save time with it all. And well, save time at our level specifically, because again, Shawnee County is it is the county municipal level. All right, so starting out, what we end up looking at here are trying to find additions to buildings or new outbuildings, porches, pools, just stuff like that that was added between 2018 and 2022. And specifically focusing on agriculture and residential. But just as a start, just focusing on those two, not commercial and resident and not industrial, for reasons I'll explain in a bit. Well, we end up we're choosing 18 specifically because with the project in 19, they would have had that and earlier. So that is the most recent untested aerials that we made the assumption on. Yeah, as I said, we tend to have a lot of geometry issues as well with commercial and industrial properties. And as we found out later, unfortunately, this is still a slow QA process after the fact. We have to check by hand. And apologize for the lack of some pictures. We end up the presentation. A lot of the in-process data was processed before we had the idea of giving it as a presentation. All right, so starting off, we ended up we obviously ran this on Pro. We started on 3.2, but it lasted long enough where we ended up having to move towards 3.3. And if we go forward with this, we would end up focusing on staying with that and in any other future releases. Obviously, as I mentioned before, you need the imagery analyst license. You need the specifically the tool, the AI tool needs that license in particular. And I believe all three towers involved in the process itself were equipped with 2060s and 2070s NVIDIA graphics cards with integrated virtual RAM, as it says, i7s, and all three had different levels of installed RAM, but all of them had above 32 gigabytes, which all three of those are important schematics if you want this to process and not crash, because these are large data sets. Obviously, as it says, for inputs, the only inputs we had for this were the aerials, which interestingly enough did manage to skirt around certain logical issues, like that we don't need to worry about internal assumptions or already existing errors within the data we already have, tainting any perceptions. Or, I'm not saying our data is bad, mind you. It allows us to get an independent look at this without any already existing information. And yeah, and again, not using the 2020 imagery, since a lot of the issues were, since any changes that would have existed in 2020 would also exist in 22. It allows us to, we also are operating the assumption that a lot of the people who a number of people who would have gotten the COVID stimulus would have possibly done some house renovations as well. So the hypothesis was that we would have more detections through that time than if we had done 18 to 20 and 20 to 22. All right, so first step, we needed to prepare the data prepare the data and process it. Because of how the data is trained, the script is trained, it looks at differences in each band. So because differences in infrared tend to be not what we're looking for, or unhelpful because infrared, it asks us to strip it down to red, blue, green, which makes sense. So we needed to use the extract bands feature to create a local copy of the 18s and 22s, which we do here. And from there, we actually this is the main AI part here. We actually it was the extract features using AI models. We actually accidentally ran the entire county all at once, which took 3 days of straight processing for each. And that was a mistake. Don't do that. Don't do that. That was a lot. That was a lot. But yeah, and we ended up having to use like a 75-80% confidence range, dropping it down a bit from the 90% that I think it comes to default with. So, and that confidence itself is important because, again, if you set the confidence higher, you need a higher chance of higher matched passes data, which is another reason why we didn't go with commercial and industrial, because if you're floating at that line, you go too low, you start picking up trees, you start picking up more RVs, you start picking up roads. You go too high, you start filtering out houses. And so you need to find that balance, which, again, to go for commercial, which tend to have more irregular shapes, or industrials, which also have irregular shapes, that also might be covered by a smokestack, or that might obscure the building below it. You need a lower confidence interval. That's why we're excluding it. So, tangent aside, this gives us the footprints we need for all the buildings in the for the 22s and the 2018s. And example, this is what we end up looking at. If you look at the big building in the far in the left, that's the mall. You also see it picked up the bridge going over I think that's 17th and 17th Street. It picked up part of the mall parking lot. It picked up a bit of the track by the school over there. But it picked up every single house, which, again, it's a balancing act. We need to find out what we need and how to get it. And unfortunately, there's going to be some things that do work and don't work. So nothing's perfect. All right, step 2. From here, we have all the polygons, every single polygon we'll ever need. Great. From here, we use the erase tool under the assumption that we have the footprints or the extents of the buildings, and we take the 22s and erase out from that the 2018s, which, from the assumption is that we would have any overlap would be additions, changes, things that didn't exist before. And again, we only care about additions for this experiment. And thankfully, the demolitions or things being removed aren't in scope, so we can just ignore those. So now that we have all of those, we chose to do a select by a parcel selection. We selected by the LCBS function. The agricultural, I think we did all the agricultural, like grazing lands, ranching, whatever. And but specifically, we looked at single family residential LBCS 1101 because trying to see if we can pick up the single family residential houses, because duplexes and apartment buildings fall under the similar problems as commercial and industrial, unfortunately. So, and now that we have that selection, we could do a select by location and define the detections that are specifically in or related to those parcels. It's intersection, not a center. There are a few detections we found around Lake Shawnee where a covered dock had been put in, but the lake is a separate parcel in terms of the parcel network. So, but it did intersect. So we had to, as you'll see a common thread with this, better to fail safe than fail dangerous. And so we ended up picking up those as well. Yeah, and as I mentioned with the confidence things, you end up seeing the center of the center of there are bits of the the industrial park to the left. Bits of the roof are missing because some roofs are the same color as the pavement. They don't get picked up. There's a hole in one of them. Trailers are being picked up. I mean, on the right, you see the irregular shapes of the mall not getting picked up. You see a lot of like weird blobbiness because it's having to aggregate itself. But at the same time, you see at the individual buildings that are more regular shape, they're picked up just fine. So you need to, again, this is more of a physical example of all this. Also, you see in the parking lot to the bottom left of the mall, you see some of the parking lot getting picked up, which I found funny. And now on to the part that I am the single most familiar with. This is congratulations, we have all the detections for that fit the criteria. Now we need to go in, roll up our sleeves, and find what works when, and just see what are false detections. Unfortunately, we realized this a bit late that how they fly the aerials, they don't go in the same path. There's no way to go in the same path. So every single house is at a slightly different angle. So we end up finding out that most buildings had left some amount of detection, which unfortunately became just background noise that we had to sort through by hand. That took me a few months to go through. And so we basically had to filter out everything above 200 feet, of everything below 200 feet as just noise, which unfortunately still left us with over 10,000 things to look through. So that took us a few months. Unfortunately, because this is a new technology and how we're looking at things, we had to, again, as I keep saying, fail safe. If we set the bar at such a point where we set the bar higher than we probably needed to, because if we pick out so many things that aren't right, the appraisers that go out, and they have to go out of their way for this one, and it's nothing. How many nothings can you give somebody before they just stop taking this seriously? So we needed to be more certain than we probably should have been, just to make sure that these are legitimate, that these aren't, just crying wolf over and over again, just trying to build confidence in a new workflow. And again, unfortunately, because of this is QCing, I had to go through by hand. with my eyes and say, is this right? Is this chaff? What have you? There were a few things that it picked up frozen lake because one time it was flown in March. It was a bunch of ice on the ground and it didn't show up in the other one. So stuff like that had to be manually filtered out. Yeah. And again, so again, from that point, we ended up having to compare to the Orion appraisal database. Like, is this new back porch that they have, does this show up in the building sketch? If yes, we already know about it. Don't worry about it, just toss it, we can move on. Because even if it doesn't show up in the permit history, not all permits get updated properly. It's paperwork. Sometimes it falls through, unfortunately. From that point, if that doesn't work, then we'd check the permit history, because sometimes the sketch doesn't get updated. It's a database with multiple thousands of things. It happens, unfortunately. And only failing both of those, does the feature not get removed. So between the high requirement of certainty required to get something on the list to begin with, there were a number of, this probably is wrong, but I cannot say with any degree of certainty that this is incorrect or this is suspicious. It's like, if there's any doubt at all, I removed it. And this is what we ended up with. This is a every single detection that we ended up with. There's about I think it was about 130 out of however many we had, which obviously it favors. I find this fascinating because it definitely does favor the more populated areas, which obviously makes sense. More people, more things being made, more whatever. But there's no specific bias other than that, which is fascinating. All right, and the last part was we ended up creating a web map for the appraisers to go look at and compare to what they've to compare with their own records. Failing that, to go out and check for themselves, what have you. Basically, yes, no, is this updated? Is this something we need to look at? Is this wrong? And something we notice is a lot of these, because with our system, properties are only checked once every 6 years. A number of these doubled up with stuff they found this year, which dovetails neatly into the results. What we ended up finding is I ended up sorting through by hand over 10,000 detections. Most of it was entirely noise. And we sent out about 130 detections to the appraisers. While the web map itself is still in progress, we have a few, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 marked and updated. How much it's worth is I cannot say, because it is currently being worked on, as it were. But a bulk of them were already caught or already marked caught or updated this year, which brings me to the interesting thing. As a result, we must reject the null hypothesis. We found next to no specific detections in this way, or at least a low amount, of a significantly low amount compared to the amount of just work, which is significant in and of itself, because I don't know how many people have been here long enough to remember Lee's talks about our view and inspect system for our appraisals. But from what I understand, it is rather developed. So in effect, this is an independent third-party way of confirming the effectiveness of our already existing system, which does have value in and of itself. And And as I said before, this is a way for us to generally, while we may not have a specific use for it for Shawnee County, and a lot of other places that are that have a less mature appraisal process, that have more people, more buildings, more parcels to look at, less appraisers, could definitely still probably find a use for this much more than we have. It could be because this is only one data point that we, as Shawnee County, are in a uniquely unsuited position to use this. So changes going forward. They are, again, as you can see here, doctrinal and project focused. For those who don't know, our VNI system is fairly well automated. We have the system in place where the appraisers get the documents, the photos and whatnot, and we run the scripts to get everything batched for the people who need to update the Orion database. And it's, I mean, I could talk more in it, but it's a little off, but it's way off topic here, so I'll spare you. The goal from this point on is actually in trying to integrate this into VNI in general, our system in general. Basically, what can we do to lighten the load of the appraisers who are going out? Which, actually there are some avenues for that. Which go into the project changes. The thought is at this point we would focus to run on the next year's VNI area, because again we batch it where 1/6 of the county is run each year, just to make it easier on them. Basically, so that in October, November, after we get the new aerials, once we get everything in place and everyone's in for the year, we are able to run it and basically, instead of having to worry about the entire county, point out with a much lower necessary cutoff limit what looks suspicious, not what looks wrong. What's suspicious? What can you look at? It allows us to operate at a much lower confidence band, so we're able to get more interesting detections out, more intriguing issues to the appraisers, being able to mark certain parcels as there might be something here, so they can focus their efforts and not have to spend so much time. But basically, because us as GIS specialists are in essence support staff, this allows us to really work in that we can make other people's jobs easier, better, faster. And yeah, again, as again, run this every year, and I would hope, and preferably batch the data so multiple people can work on it at a time and not have to worry about data corruption. Which, again, as the old saying goes, more hands make less work. We're able to get this out quicker, faster, and because this took months for me, it took months to make it at my standard. As you go quicker through things, you're able to find you're able to do things quicker, be able to do things better, able to refine the process through repetition. So going forward, if this is something that others would do, this would take less time with each iteration. Which brings us to the conclusions, as it were. This is regardless, still very time and labor intensive, but with more people, you can easily fractionalize the amount of time required. While this is not specifically useful as a standalone thing for us, other people can easily find use for it. This is, until we go out and actually try it in other places, I cannot say that this is not useless. None of this is useless. But you must be prepared, like how we were, to have to sort through the detections that it finds. And even if it isn't useful for you, you might find other ways to integrate it into your systems, or to maybe something you can't even think about right now, because because stuff already, because as life finds a way, right? There's always new ways to do things with the stuff that we have that we can't even imagine. Yeah. And more than anything else, I have to say, be smarter than your tools. This has been a adage I have been living by since I was working at Apple. These things don't think, you have to think. They are powerful, but they cannot make value judgments, and you got to be careful with that. But at that point, I believe that's enough soapboxing from me. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Andrew. Sure, I have one. So you hit on some how much manual processing you had to do. So like as you in the future, as you keep doing these, would you be able to like train the model off of previous data sets that you have to make it better, to where it's
Yes.
like, hey, this is actually just noise?
Yeah, one of the things that that's another one of the reasons why we kept a local copy of the model is, in theory, we'd be training it as we go. The issue is, as you fiddle around with it, we'd also be fiddling with the confidence. So we don't know specifically how it'll take a bit while longer if we're messing with both sliders. So, but it's definitely something we can do. We are planning on, assuming Lee's replacement keeps that going.
Mhm. And what resolution of imagery did you have to use with this?
Well, it's our aerials, so we ended up looking at, I think it was half foot.
Okay.
So, but I don't know offhand the specific, if the model was using a specific higher thing, lower resolution or higher resolution. But the half foot was definitely necessary when going with the QC, because once you get above a certain pixel size, you can't tell a car from a garage, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Complaints? Digital tomatoes to throw at me? I take insults well.
Hi, Andrew, this is Jean Yao. I
Hello.
don't have a title, but I have a thought or comments. I work for Johnson County, but I don't do property or building footprint stuff. I'm more on the statistics side. So I
Okay.
took a class, an ESRI class about spatial analysis, and I think I tested one of these machine learning model, deep learning model.
Mm-hmm.
So then I talked to my colleagues here. I was like, well, are we going to use it? Can we use it? Will that help us? It turns out that our people already, like every year or every other year, they use some error image and already got all the building prints. And so they already know all that information, and they probably have a better building footprint than the AI can detect.
Oh, definitely.
So then that made me think, maybe ESRI developed tool for people who are in countries or governments that have less technology than US. Because I feel like, well, if our countries already, have a really good record of all the buildings, then I imagine all other US counties already also have the same high quality data already. We don't really need a deep learning model to detect things from a air image. But I guess if you want to know some other countries building footprints, or if some other country they just started to have an appraiser's office, maybe then they didn't have any historical data. So if they do this large process, at least that will have them start a database of their building footprints. So I'm just curious on what other people's thinking on this.
Yeah, again, a lot of this was an experiment. It was, and I'm a scientist by training. I went to school for geology. It's one of those, like, is that assumption correct? Like that we do have this, and you're right. But you are correct. We do generally have this, but and it also has other uses that you can see as well, like a flood goes through. You can generate what buildings are still there on the fly. You can just stuff like that. Just because the buildings are there, I know our building footprints are out of date because new buildings are put up, buildings are taken down all the time. We don't always update our data on time. I'm not saying this is a good replacement, but as I said, going into this, being able to see how we're doing without any of our own data, our own in-house data, I should say, is a good way of not having to relying on you being right to see if you're right. Does that make sense? It doesn't allow for scaling issues, like rolling issues.
You mean to using this method to provide a second line of evidence?
Kind of. I'm sorry. I have a stutter, so I stumble over my own words. But again, this was an experiment. And going into experiment with assumptions is so.
Well, I'm glad you did it using real data instead of just taking a guess and blindly trust ESRIs.
Yeah, well, blindly trusting data is a good way to walk into a pit, unfortunately. Let's not take the McNamara method.
Thank you.
Fundamental Geoai tests for. Yeah, okay, so Brian, you're asking if is that I'm sorry, are you asking, if this is a solution looking for a problem, or apologies? Yeah, take your time. I'm it's yeah. It's basically we need to be. It's as I said with the limits of parameter, like confidence intervals, being able to say we need we should lower it a little bit to make sure that we catch what we need to, or being able to yeah, these are limited, and well, I mean, everything is limited into so, but this allows us to tweak what we already have by integrating them to make it more efficient. I mean, as much as you can quantify that, right? Not everything can be measured by numbers, which is, again, if you're familiar with the issues. Okay. Do you have any do you have any sources we can look at for that? I'm just not questioning, just actually curious about that one. So, and that's the thing is, I don't want to, like, we wanted to try what they had already out of the box to see, also as a way of testing what they have, which it works, which is the unfortunate thing of it's the whole design by committee issue. No, you're good. You're good. It's I'm it yeah, it's the design by committee issue. By trying to make something that fits for everybody, you never really find something that works for anybody. So to get something that really works for you, you need to you need to basically make it, like, tune it for yourself. So I don't know if that answers your question there. Anyone else?
I don't see it.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the problem with the fine print, though. You can you can hide a lot of things in the fine print, unfortunately.
I don't have a question, but I was just going to tell you that it was really interesting. I work for the city of Russell, and I know we share our permits for building permits and different like that. We send those on to the county for the appraiser. So we try to keep that communication so they know if there's a change out there. The only thing is, you know, you always have the possibility of missing stuff, or someone doesn't get a permit, or even with the county, you know, what the county does outside of the city. But it was interesting to see, and yeah, I bet that did take a long time to have to look through and everything. I just wanted to listen in and see what all you guys had to do. So, but thank you.
Hopefully it was entertaining at the very least.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh, all right. Mark, you think of anything else from here? Or are we just about done?
I don't see any other questions. So, as always, you can reach out to Andrew for more pointed questions.
And threats?
But yeah, thank you again for giving the presentation, and I think you are on the schedule to give it again at the conference. So that gives us
Thursday.
one. So if you want to see it again, sign up for the conference as the plug for the conference. So that is coming up here in about a month. So look forward to seeing you all there. But if there's nothing else, I think that concludes our programming for today.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.